In May of 2021, a 4,000-acre lake in northern Florida began to spin. Not from a storm, not from a spill, but from a hole in its own floor. The water, all 16 square kilometers of it, was forming a vortex, a calm, steady, clockwise spiral directly over a point in the lake known as Porterhole Sink. For weeks, the water level dropped. By June, the lake that had been a fixture of life north of Tallahassee for generations, a place for bass fishing and weekend boating, was little more than a vast steaming expanse of mud. The water was gone, not evaporated, not diverted. It had been pulled down the drain. This is the story of a lake that disappears, a natural phenomenon so strange, so powerful, that it can swallow a reservoir and leave behind a prairie. But the real story isn't just about the vanishing water. It's about where that water goes, the deep ancient plumbing it joins, and the troubling message its disappearance sends about the ground beneath Florida's feet. To see Lake Jackson empty is to witness an inversion of the world. Boat ramps that once slipped into blue water now end abruptly in a field of cracked earth and sprouting weeds. Docks stand like strange wooden sculptures, 10 feet above a new green landscape. Local residents who once worried about flooding now find themselves walking their dogs on the lake bed. For weeks in the summer of 2021, a surreal festival atmosphere took hold. All-terrain vehicles buzzed across the drying mudflats. Families picnicked where fish once swam. It's not every day you get to stand at the bottom of a lake. This sense of communal wonder is a recurring theme here. It's fascinating how a geologic event can bring a community together. Curious what you think about this kind of response? But beneath the spectacle, a quiet emergency was unfolding. As the main body of water receded, it left behind isolated pools, shrinking by the hour under the Florida sun. In these muddy pockets, the lake's entire aquatic population was trapped. Thousands of largemouth bass, bream, and crappie flapped in the shallows, their water turning to warm mud. This is when the call went out. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, or FWC, knew the dry down was coming. They had seen it before. Led by biologists like John Paul Gagliano, they organized a massive rescue operation. But they couldn't do it alone. Hundreds of volunteers answered the call, wading into the thick, clinging muck, armed with nets and buckets. They worked in a race against the sun, a frantic, muddy ballet of conservation. The work was grueling. Each step in the deep sediment was a struggle. They would surround the shrinking pool, drive the fish into their nets, and then transfer them into aerated tanks on trucks waiting on the shore. John Paul Galliano called it a great community event, a moment where people get passionate about their resources. It's a powerful image. Dozens of people, covered in mud, working together to save the fish from their own vanishing lake. Those rescued fish, thousands of them, were transported to nearby Lake Iomonia and other local ponds, a living insurance policy for when Lake Jackson would eventually return. Even dozens of alligators, the lake's ancient reptilian residents, had to be captured and relocated from the drying ground. To understand how a 4,000-acre body of water can simply vanish, you have to understand the ground it sits on. Lake Jackson is not a normal lake. It has no river flowing in, no stream flowing out. It is what geologists call a solution basin lake, situated in a karst landscape. Harley Means, the assistant state geologist with the Florida Geological Survey, has a simple analogy. Think of it as a giant bathtub. The lake basin is the tub, and the drains are two massive sinkholes in its floor, Lime Sink and Porterhole Sink. This entire region of Florida rests on a foundation of Suwannee limestone, a porous rock formed from the remains of marine life tens of millions of years ago. Over eons, naturally acidic rainwater has percolated down through the soil, slowly dissolving this limestone, creating a hidden world of caverns, conduits, and underground channels. This is karst topography. The lake exists in a delicate balance. As long as the drains are plugged with clay, sediment, and organic debris, and as long as rainfall outpaces evaporation, the tub stays full. But the lake is directly, physically connected to something far larger, the Floridan aquifer system. This is not just some underground pool of water. It is one of the most productive aquifers on the planet, a massive, slow-moving subterranean river of fresh water held within the limestone, stretching beneath the entire state of Florida and into Georgia, Alabama, and South Carolina. It provides drinking water for millions. During periods of drought, when rainfall is scarce, the water table of this great aquifer begins to drop. As it drops, the pressure balance changes. The water in the aquifer is no longer pushing up against the bottom of the lake. Instead, the weight of the lake water above begins pushing down. If the water table of the aquifer drops below the level of the sediment, plug in porterhole sink. The pressure can become too great. The plug gives way, and the drain opens. The water isn't lost. It's simply returning home, recharging the same aquifer that supplies the taps and faucets in the nearby city of Tallahassee. It's a direct transfer from the surface world to the world below. This is the part the headlines do not capture. This is not a new catastrophe. It is an ancient, repeating cycle. The native people of the Fort Walton culture, who built the ceremonial mounds that still stand in Lake Jackson Mounds Archaeological State Park between 1050 and 1500 AD, surely witnessed this. They lived on its shores for centuries, watching the water come and go. The phenomenon is geological destiny, woven into the very fabric of the place. Modern records confirm this deep history. The first widely documented drainage occurred in 1907. It happened again in 1932. In January of 1957, the lake drained almost completely, staying mostly dry for 2 full years, a vast prairie on the edge of town, before finally refilling in the fall of 1959. Local historian and longtime resident Clifton Auchie has seen the lake in all its phases, a witness to its cyclical nature. He remembers the stories, he remembers the land. Then came the drainage of September 1982. By this time, more homes had been built around the lake. More people had a personal stake in the water staying put. A sense of frustration grew. Some locals decided to take matters into their own hands. In a desperate, almost folkloric attempt to fix their lake, they decided to plug the hole. They brought in truckloads of rubble and debris. And then someone had another idea. A junked Volkswagen Beetle was towed to the edge of the swirling water over porterhole sink. The car was pushed in, a sacrifice to the sinkhole. It was swallowed without a trace. The lake continued to drain, indifferent to their efforts. The earth took the car and the water and everything else. The sinkhole was not a problem to be solved. It was a feature of the system. The 1982 event taught a crucial lesson. You can't fight the geology of Florida. After providing all that history and context, it feels like a good moment to say, this is the kind of deep dive we love to do. We explore the hidden systems and surprising stories behind the world you see every day. You can subscribe if you want more videos like this. Anyway, back to the story. The 1982 event was a dramatic failure of human intervention. The next major drain came in May of 1990, when large portions of the lakebed were again exposed, drawing scientists and curiosity seekers. By then, the official understanding had shifted. Geologists and ecologists began to argue that the drainages, far from being a disaster, were a necessary part of the lake's life cycle. They were a reset button. When the lake is full for many years, a thick layer of organic muck builds up on the bottom, decaying plants, sediment, and nutrients. This can lead to lower oxygen levels and murkier water. But when the lake drains, the sun and air get to work on that exposed lakebed. The organic muck dries out, compacts, and oxidizes. It breaks down. This process, called a dry down, essentially cleanses the lake floor. New, terrestrial plants sprout in the fertile soil, creating a temporary prairie that is rich with life. When the rains eventually return and the aquifer rises, sealing the sinkhole from below, the lake refills over a much cleaner, healthier foundation. The water is clearer. The habitat for fish like largemouth bass is vastly improved. The destructive event is, paradoxically, an act of creation. It's a complex, counterintuitive idea. It's wild that a vanishing lake is actually a healthy lake. If you find this part interesting, maybe give the video a like, or share it with a friend who appreciates these kinds of natural puzzles. The 2021 drainage followed this predictable pattern. The water vanished. The volunteers rescued the fish. The community marveled at the exposed lakebed. Then, over the following months, as heavy rains returned to North Florida, the process reversed itself. The water table in the Floridan aquifer rose. The upward pressure sealed porterhole sink. The basin began to hold water again. By the spring of 2022, Lake Jackson was full. Boats returned to the water. The sport fishing, now over a revitalized lakebed, was better than ever. The system had reset itself, just as it was designed to do. The cycle was complete. But here's the detail that introduces a new and unsettling tension into this ancient story. The rhythm is changing. For most of its recorded history, from 1907 to 1982, The lake drained significantly roughly every 20 to 25 years. It was a generational event. You could grow up on the lake and perhaps only witness it happen once or twice. But look at the calendar since the late 1990s. A major drainage in 1999. Another significant event in 2021. The interval between these cycles seems to be collapsing. What was once a generational event is now happening much more frequently. And this is where the local story of a quirky disappearing lake plugs into a much larger, more ominous regional and global conversation. The frequency of the drainages is strongly correlated with regional drought, and droughts in the southeastern United States are becoming more frequent and more intense. The delicate balance between rainfall and the level of the aquifer is being stressed in a way it hasn't been in modern history. The Floridan aquifer, that immense subterranean sea, is not infinite. It is being pumped more aggressively than ever before to supply Florida's booming population and its vast agricultural industry. Every new subdivision, every golf course, every farm is another straw in the drink. So when Lake Jackson drains, it's no longer just a local curiosity. It's a canary in the coal mine for the state's most critical resource. The vanishing water is a stark visual indicator of the falling water table in the aquifer below. Its disappearance is a symptom of a system under strain. The residents who tried to plug the sinkhole with a car in 1982 were treating a symptom. The real issue is the health of the entire aquifer system, a problem you can't push a Volkswagen into. The scientific consensus now is to let the lake be a lake, to allow its natural cycle to play out. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection and the FWC have embraced the dry downs as an essential management tool. There are no more plans to plug the sink. But this enlightened management approach exists within a much more challenging context. The natural cycle is now unfolding against a backdrop of unnatural pressures. More people, more pumps, a changing climate. The system is being asked to perform its ancient function under entirely new rules. The lake and the aquifer are linked. When one is stressed, the other feels it. The health of that invisible underground river is tied to the health of everything on the surface. And so, even when the lake is full, as it is today, a sense of uncertainty lingers. The boats are back. The bass are biting. The waterfront homes once again have a waterfront. But everyone knows the drain is still there. They know the plug is temporary. It's a mixture of sediment and clay, holding back 4,000 acres of water against the pull of the earth. And they know, with more certainty than ever before, that it will one day give way again. The only questions are when and how often. The 2021 event was a spectacle, a community-building exercise, and a scientific lesson all rolled into one. It reminded everyone in Tallahassee that they live on top of a dynamic, living geology. It's a humbling thought. The solid ground beneath our feet is not so solid. The landmarks we take for granted are not so permanent. A lake can become a prairie overnight, and the water that fills our glasses is part of the same secretive, subterranean flow that can swallow a lake whole. 3 questions still hang over the basin, even with the water back. With droughts becoming more severe, will the periods of dry down become longer and the full periods shorter, fundamentally changing the lake's character? As the demand on the Floridan aquifer continues to grow, what happens when a major drainage event coincides with a critical water shortage for the nearly 400,000 people in the Tallahassee metro area? And finally, if this natural cleansing cycle is now accelerating, what other hidden geological systems across the state are also shifting their rhythm in response to a changing world? The water from the 2021 drainage has long since made its way through the limestone labyrinth. It has replenished the aquifer and flowed out through springs downstream. But the mechanism remains. The sinkholes of Porter and Lime are plugged. For now, they wait. Somewhere beneath the pine forests and highways of Leon County, the great slow river of the aquifer breathes. And on the surface, Lake Jackson shimmers in the sun, holding its water, waiting for the pressure from below to drop, waiting for the day the drain opens again. The cycle is not broken. It is just getting faster.